Welcome to Prediction Market Movers. My name is Chris Gerlacher with Prediction News, and we are coming off of the 2025 off-year elections. Democrats finally had a good night. I can't remember the last time I've been able to say that. So we're going to talk through what the results last night mean and really what they may not mean for 2026. Give this video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Prediction News, and follow us on X at Prediction News. Now I want to bring in Damon Thayer. Damon is the former Senate Majority Leader in the Kentucky Senate and Prediction News political director. Damon, what happened last night? What do we need to know about the results from last night?
Blue states went blue. A blue city went from being a blue city to a communist city run by an anti-Semite. I mean, really, it sums it up. I mean, the only thing that really happened last night is in Virginia, the Democrats flipped a Republican governorship to a Democrat, which is normally how it goes in Virginia. According to their constitution, governors can only serve one term. It very rarely occurs where a Democrat succeeds a Democrat or a Republican succeeds a Republican. New York City elected a Democrat mayor who is an avowed socialist. And has a lot of anti-Semitic rhetoric. As recently as today, the day after he won the election, Virginia elected a Democrat governor. No surprise there. The race had tightened a little bit, but over the weekend, you could start to see both in the prediction markets as well as in traditional polling that the Democrat Mikey Sherrill was likely to win. And the race in Virginia was never close. There are a lot of federal employees who live in the Northern Virginia suburbs. They're all Democrats. They're all mad about the shutdown, and they blamed it on Trump and the Republicans. And so they elected a Democrat governor. It's really actually not that newsworthy. And I'm glad you started off by calling it an off-year election, because these are not midterms.
Right.
They're an off-year election when there is generally lower voter turnout. And those who are angry and motivated, in this case the Democrats, have an edge. And that's really what happened on the off-year election yesterday in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia.
Sure. And you were watching the markets some, but did you see any big difference between the prediction markets and the polls?
Not really. I mean, you could see over the weekend that the prediction markets were moving very strongly for Mamdani in New York. And it's been that way all along. It might have tightened a little bit when it became a three-person race, but with Curtis Lewa not getting out, there are going to be Republicans who just couldn't bring themselves to vote for Cuomo. And for Republicans like me, Cuomo is a bad Democrat, but like President Trump said, take a bad Democrat over a socialist any day. But, as you saw in the election results, there's a group of Republicans who voted for Sliwa and they just couldn't bring themselves to vote for either the socialist or a bad Democrat who's been around New York politics forever. So I could see over the weekend that the polls that might have tightened in favor of Jack Ciattarelli for a little while in New Jersey were starting to give Mikey Sherrill an edge again, and that was reflected in the way the markets moved as well. It's interesting. I did some research today on Kalshi. $120 million bet on the New York City mayor's race. Only $21 million was traded on the New Jersey governor's race, and in the Virginia governor's race, only $5.5 million was traded on Kalshi. By way of comparison, there's more money bet on how long the shutdown is going to last than there was traded on the New Jersey or Virginia governor's race. So I found that kind of interesting. Lots of trading taking place on the New York City mayor's race, which is pretty interesting because it's been a foregone conclusion for a couple of months. There was a little bit, 21 million traded on the New Jersey governor's race because that for a while was made interesting by Ciattarelli. But then, everything sort of reverted to the mean, and the Democrats won in blue states. And I just found those numbers interesting. As these prediction markets continue to evolve, where is the money going to go? Where is the liquidity going to go?
Mhm.
And it was all in on this New York mayor's race, which was as much of a slam dunk as Secretariat was in the Belmont Stakes back in 1973.
It is amazing what happens when national media just covers and covers this one race in the country.
Yeah, you didn't really see much coverage on the national mainstream media, and by mainstream, I'm really talking about the big cable news networks.
Mhm.
They didn't really start covering these two governors' races until the last week or 10 days.
Mhm.
Geeks like you and I who follow these things, we've been watching it for months, but the major news outlets didn't really start covering it until the end. It was interesting, though. The Democrats were concerned. They sent in the heavy heads like Barack Obama and spent a lot of money on these races to secure them. So I thought, that was interesting. The Democrats making a big play, spending a lot of money to make sure that they won those two races.
What are they worried about?
Well, there were polls that showed Ciattarelli in a dead heat. Now,
Mhm.
other poll we've talked about this before. Some polling companies are better than others. Some had that New Jersey governor's race neck and neck. Others showed Mikey Sherrill with a double-digit lead throughout. Wire to wire, basically.
Mhm.
So I just think they look back at the presidential race a year ago, and especially in New Jersey, where some of these cities and towns went for Trump. But everything reverted to the mean.
Mhm.
Back, Virginia went from being a red state to a purple state. Now it's looking pretty blue today. New Jersey's been a blue state for a long, long time, and New York is New York.
Mhm.
So it's just which flavor of Democrat are you gonna elect? And they clearly went pretty radical. And I know in some places that Republicans were sort of licking our wounds, but the truth is, I think this New York City mayor's result is really bad for Democrats, because over the next year, as we head into the midterms, we're gonna see exactly what socialist style government looks like in New York City, and I don't think people are going to like it.
What kind of policies are you anticipating in New York City next year?
Well, if you look at Mamdani's campaign platform, it's free everything.
Mhm.
Basically, the old Robin Hood strategy: take from those who have and give to those who have not. I mean, I'm going to, he wants to have government run grocery stores and more government subsidized housing.
Mhm.
He wants more government uh, funding for public transportation. I mean, who knows what else he might come up with. I mean, he in his acceptance speech, he mentioned 6 other countries and never mentioned the United States of America. It's pretty concerning, but we're those of us on the Republican side, we're gonna be making sure that the country sees exactly what kind of policies he puts in place in the nation's largest city.
Sure. And how effective is it going to be to tie a moderate Democratic candidate elsewhere in the country to the Democratic Socialists running New York City?
That's the problem the Democrats have, is this kind of extreme leftism is sort of taken over their party. And we've seen this in my party, in the Republican Party. We've seen it, where you have to get real extreme to win a primary.
Mhm.
I think you're going to see that on the Democrat side, where in a lot of places they're going to make a litmus test out of these extreme policies, and they're going to force what's left of any moderate Democrats to move to the left if they want to win primaries. Because I think this is going to embolden that wing of the Democratic Party. I hope they double down on it, and it'll be interesting to see how that affects the prediction markets going forward. Just to show you how the prediction markets aren't really focused on control of the House of Representatives. Only 1.3 million has been traded so far on Kalshi on the question of who will control the House of Representatives. And I think when I checked, it was 63% Democrat, or maybe it was 70% Democrat for the House and 63% Republican for the Senate. So that that's pretty interesting. There's more money being bet right now on who will be the next president of the United States in 2028 than there is on who will control Congress a year from now. So 1.3 million has been traded on who will control the House of Representatives. 3.5 million has been traded on who will be the next president of the United States. And that election is 3 years off. By the way, right now, the trading market says Vance 32%, Newsom 22%. So, the market's sort of all over the place with not a heck of a lot of liquidity yet, but all over the place in terms of it's predicting that Democrats will control the House in a year from now. Republicans will control the Senate, and J.D. Vance will be the next president of the United States in 3 years. But again, not a lot of liquidity right now as we're looking at these prediction markets.
And as we get further into midterm season, I mean, you were a Republican operative before. When is candidate selection going to wrap up, and when do we actually see the race between the likely Democrat and Republican across the country?
Well, you've got some primaries as early as February and as late as August. Now, filing deadlines, that's going to be the key thing. So the first thing we want to watch are the filing deadlines. Here in Kentucky, where I live, it's early January. It's spread out, through the first months of the year. That's going to be the first thing we want to watch. How does candidate recruitment go in these House districts? There's a couple dozen House districts that are considered swing, and we still don't know how redistricting is going to affect that, but we want to watch the filing deadline. And then as time goes on and we get into the primary seasons, in the swing district and swing states, we're going to see what kind of candidates are being nominated by both parties. Are they going to be candidates who focused on this social issues on the far right and these sort of left-wing policies that Mamdani is now the key spokesperson for, along with AOC and her squad? Because those candidates in swing districts are less electable. If you have to win a primary in either party by adopting extreme positions of the far left or the far right, that makes a candidate less electable in a general election in swing districts. Now, that's not so much the case in heavy blue or heavy red districts, but we're not really going to be paying attention to those. They're heavy blue or heavy red for a reason in a general election. But I think what you're really going to have to watch are the primaries in a lot of these places, because it's less about, in the primaries, it's less about who's going to control Congress. It's more about what flavor of the Democrats or what flavor of the Republicans are sort of rising to the top in those primaries, and can they win general elections? I mean, we've seen this before. We saw Republicans who were nominated who Trump got behind in 2020, and they lost their seats because they weren't electable. And we've got candidates like Peter Meyer in Grand Rapids, who is kind of a moderate center right guy from near Grand Rapids, Michigan. He held on to his seat comfortably in Western Michigan for a couple of cycles, and then Trump got behind kind of an extreme right winger who was able to defeat Meyer in the primary, but he lost the general election. Republicans are going to have to try to figure out a way to get those kind of seats back if they're going to hold on to the House of Representatives.
That is something I'm very curious to watch in 2026, because Trump likes to play kingmaker, but he is much better at holding the coalition of the Republican Party together than he is selecting candidates in these different areas. I mean, he is a better party figurehead than an operative, from what I can tell. How does that line up with what you've seen?
I think that's a really good observation, Chris. For example, 2 years ago, we lost a governor's race that we should have won here in Kentucky. And the Trump endorsed candidate won the primary, led wire to wire, and then lost to the incumbent Democrat by 5 points. I think there were other candidates in the race who, had they been the nominee, had a better chance to win. Now, perhaps the president has learned that lesson, because we have three really, if the filing deadline comes to pass and Ed Galrine gets in against Thomas Massie, we could have three of the hottest Republican primaries in America next May here in Kentucky. You've got the open Senate seat that has been created by the retirement of Mitch McConnell. Mm-hmm. You've got a three-way primary there, including the incumbent congressman from where I sit right now in Lexington, Kentucky, Andy Barr. All three of these candidates are seeking President Trump's endorsement, including Daniel Cameron, who he endorsed in the governor's race 2 years ago. He got him through the primary, but he lost the general. So what we're seeing is that the president isn't in as much of a hurry to try to play kingmaker here in Kentucky as maybe he has in the past. Same in the open seat for Congressman Andy Barr here in Lexington, Kentucky, Central Kentucky, the 6th congressional district. He has not endorsed there yet. Now, he is making a case to try to beat Congressman Thomas Massie from Kentucky's 4th congressional district, which is northern Kentucky, and it stretches all the way to the eastern edge of the district bordering West Virginia, all the way to the west in Louisville. It kind of follows the Ohio River in Kentucky's northern border. He's putting a lot of time and energy and money into defeating Congressman Thomas Massie with a retired Navy SEAL by the name of Ed Galrine. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's why he's reluctant to endorse in these two open seat races. And maybe that's emblematic of what's happening around the country. He would be, in my opinion, he would be better, like you said, as kind of being the party head who tries to bring everybody together rather than playing kingmaker, and let the voters decide who the best candidates are, and then have the president help them in the general election.
Mm-hmm. And when do Republican candidates in the primaries, when are they going to begin breaking from Trump a little bit more? Is it too early for them to begin doing that, or are we going to begin seeing that in the 2027 off years when he's not as important for the midterms and he should be on his way out in 28?
It's too early. I'm very close to these races in Kentucky, and nobody here in a state like Kentucky, which is one of the president's top states, he enjoys, 65, 68% overall approval rating, 85% plus among Republicans. Nobody in a deep red state or a deep red district who has a primary is going to break from the president yet. And there's no reason to. He has a good story to tell for Republicans. Public opinion isn't tracking that yet, but there actually are signs that the economy is recovering. It just hasn't, I don't think it's sunk into people's checkbooks and savings account balances yet. But I think it will, and I think people are hoping that's the case, because it's way too soon to cut and run. And especially if you look at yesterday's results in blue states, it's, you're going to see, and we talked about this before, Chris, the last time I was on. For the next couple of weeks, the Democrats are going to make a big deal saying that they've got all the momentum, but they just won in 3 places where they should win. Mm-hmm. In a couple of weeks, something else will be the topic of conversation. Let's not forget also that I mentioned it before, this government shutdown definitely helped Democrats in these states, because Democrats are more angry about it than Republicans. And right now we are seeing a bit of an enthusiasm gap where the Democrats are more excited to vote than Republicans. Now, the one cautionary tale is I hope that changes by a year from now, because if Republicans are not enthusiastic, with Trump not on the ballot, about voting in the midterms, Republicans are going to have a challenging cycle, especially in the House, and if California redistricts and creates a bunch of new Democrat districts. And we're already seeing Republican states receding from wanting to do redistricting and to create more Republican districts. So redistricting and voter enthusiasm will play a bigger deal in next year's midterms than elections that happened yesterday in two blue states and a deep blue city.
Mm-hmm. Moving into some of the specifics of those states and what the voters are looking for, what did that small group of voters respond to in New York City, Virginia, and New Jersey? Because it can't have been the same thing in all three locations.
It's not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
New York City, he got just over 50% of the vote, Mamdani.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw exit polls that shows that 80% of young white women voted for him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting sort of cognitive dissonance, because across the country, we're seeing 20-something men be strong supporters of the president and the Republican agenda. 20-something women, the complete opposite. So clearly in New York City, they're responding to this. It's socialism. It's collectivism. It's central government running everything, and take from the rich and give to the poor. And that's a euphemism, of course, because everybody's definition of rich is different. But that's basically the message that got Mamdani across the finish line there. In New Jersey's a blue state, and Ciattarelli pounded away on rising energy costs in New Jersey and trying to blame it on the Democrats. And, clearly the voters didn't respond to it. So, that message, which was a local message tailored for New Jersey, that Democrats are responsible for rising energy costs in the Garden State, clearly that didn't work for Ciattarelli. His name ID left over from almost winning 4 years ago didn't help him win. And, voters decided to stay the course with the Democrat. In Virginia, I think the government shutdown played a major role. If you look at the suburbs, Northern Virginia, what they call Nova, if you go back to Barack Obama's 8 years in the White House, he added tens of thousands of six-figure government jobs to the executive branch. And most of those people have nice suburban homes in Nova. And if you look at the numbers, you'll see they came out big time for Abigail Spanberger and made her the next governor, and helped win a bunch of, I think we saw 13 Republican incumbents in the House of Delegates lost to Democrats. And my guess is a lot of those were in suburban areas, and that, probably closer to DC. You got to remember, there are a lot of residents of the Commonwealth of Virginia who live in the Washington, D.C. TV market, where the shutdown stuff is news every day. If they're not affected by the shutdown, they probably know people who are. And I think we're going to see in exit polling over the course of the next few days that was a driving force behind Spanberger's win.
Mm-hmm. I want to zoom in on Ciattarelli. He's run twice, lost twice, this year by a larger margin. Putting on your operative hat again, how many more runs does he realistically have with the GOP establishment behind him?
It's going to be tough. I mean, New Jersey's a tough state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a blue state. It's not even competitive in presidential races or U.S. Senate races. I think, there were polls that showed that it was a close race. The Democrats brought in the heavy hitters and a lot of money to ensure that win. And, clearly they did a better job getting enthusiastic Democrats to vote than enthusiastic Republicans. And even if all the Republicans voted in New Jersey, you still need some of the Democrats to vote Republican, because there's more of them. So, I don't live in New Jersey or know enough about it to know, who the heir apparent is in 4 years from now. But, Ciattarelli's had two pretty big bites at the apple. Mm-hmm. To me, he seemed like a great candidate. I've been following this race all year. He's a handsome man, and he's been working it for 4 years since he lost to Phil Murphy by 3 points. He shook a lot of hands, knocked on a lot of doors, and had a good message. And, he and his supporters got to be dispirited this morning, because they did everything right. Mm-hmm. But New Jersey reverted to the mean, and the mean is it's a deep blue state. And it's hard for even a great candidate like him to overcome. And I think, dissatisfaction, look, the Democrats are as unhappy as I've ever seen them about a Republican being in the White House. And they're motivated. And this was, in addition to the energy issue not really resonating with Jersey voters, this was the first chance in a year for Democrats to express their unhappiness with the Trump presidency. And that was a factor in Virginia and in New Jersey. This is the tangible way that they could express, beyond having hissy fits on social media. This is the way that they could express the fact that they're mad at the president and poke their finger in his eye figuratively. And I think that's probably a factor. I mean, Mikey Sherrill won by a pretty big margin. I mean, he came closer to beating an incumbent governor, which on paper is harder to do, than he did in an open seat. Now, remember, she is a congresswoman, and Congress people represent 800 and some thousand people, and get regular coverage, and that obviously helped her as well.
And one of the surprises last night for me was Jay Jones pulled it out, and by a 5-6% margin, give or take. Was that all just anti-Trump feeling in the Democratic Party, or was there something else there?
Yeah, that's probably the most disappointing race of the night, to see that Jason Myers was defeated by Jones. I mean, just a deplorable candidate who said terrible things on the campaign trail, and still won, like you said, by 5 or 6 points. Really disappointing. But I haven't had a chance to dive into the exit polls yet. I mean, we're not even 24 hours since the polls closed when we're doing this. But I got to believe that the anti-Trump sentiment and the angry at Trump over the shutdown and the suburban votes from Northern Virginia, it was just a blue wave that swept Jason Myers out of the office. Pretty disappointing, to be honest with you.
There was this line. I just finished this book about Hillary Clinton's failed campaign in 2016, and there's this line near the end that's roughly, voters can tell the difference between what offends them versus what affects them. This was in the context of the Trump grab him by the pussy, like October surprise, one of the half dozen October surprises that year.
There were a lot of them.
Yeah. How does that slogan hold up in current politics? Is that a split that voters still make at the ballot box?
I think people are clearly, and certainly in places like Virginia, which is a blue state, they're certainly less offended by that when their guy says it. And I think we learned that in 2016 when Trump won the election. And, he said some things that were pretty deplorable, like the quote that you just said. I'm not going to repeat it because it's deplorable. But I think if you're a voter and your candidate says something deplorable, you're less likely to be offended by it, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And it's more likely for the other side to be aghast and offended by it. But, we live in an era where people are so easily offended, but it's awful situational, because if a Republican had said what Jay Jones said, I mean, there'd be congressional inquiries and inquisitions. So I feel like we live in an era of people being situationally offended, and clearly not enough Democrats were offended by Jay Jones to keep Jason Mraz in office.
And zooming back out to the electorate again, and the parties, starting with the Democrats, how could they misread the 2025 results for the midterms and make tactical mistakes going forward?
It happens all the time. Both parties, they misread too much into these off-year elections, and history shows that it really what happened yesterday in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia is going to have very little to do with what happens in the midterms next year. I mean, the map favors Republicans in the Senate. The mood favors Democrats in the House. we still have, sort of the intangibles like voter enthusiasm, the quality of candidates who emerge from primaries, and what the Democrats do on gerrymandering and redistricting. Back to your question, I hope they miss, as a Republican operative and a guy who for over a quarter of a century helped elect Republicans. I hope they misread it, because if they think that moving to a socialist agenda is what's going to get them back to the White House, they're wrong. And I think I've been reading some things where true Democratic operatives who care about electing Democrats, less about philosophy, more about party, they're a little worried today about what happened in New York, because just look at the markets. 120 million traded on the New York City mayor's race, and 21 million in New Jersey, 5.5 million in Virginia. People weren't paying attention there. People are going to be paying attention to what happens with this new mayor in New York, and Democrats are worried about it. Let's hope they don't think this is, well, from a policy point of view. Let's hope they don't think this is what America wants. But from a political point of view, I hope they think it's what America wants, because what they'll do, it'll be a boomerang effect. They'll overreact, and the pendulum always swings, and voters tend to enact the boomerang effect, where it comes back around and hits you in the head if you overreact. And I've been around long enough to see this pendulum swing, and so I'm not panicking, but I'm not panicking for the midterms. But I do think Republicans need to be concerned about a couple things. Number one, voter enthusiasm. Number two, a continued emphasis on social issues and nothing else. I'm a social conservative. I'm a Reagan Republican. I voted for all the typical social issues, but I think my party continuing to double and triple down on those things in a lot of races. We saw it in Kentucky 2 years ago. We saw it in Virginia this year. You've got to have a blend of economic and lifestyle issues to get you over the finish line, especially in swing districts. I mean, sure, if you live in a safe red district, sure, go ahead, double down and triple down on the transgender issues. Sure, go right ahead. That's what you think is going to get you through a primary. And then, you live in a deep red district, 58, 59, 60% Republican or more. Okay, that's
works
fine.
For you.
If that works fine, I mean, it does make me sometimes worried about the direction of my party and the direction of the country, because I think we have winning issues on economics and immigration. Poll after poll after poll, Chris, shows that the two biggest things on the mind of the American public, immigration and economics. They want they like overall what Trump wants to do on the border. They may disagree with some of the tactics, but overall there's strong support for that, and they want to see it in their checkbooks. They want to see it in their paychecks. And I think once these tax cuts kick in, we're already seeing gas prices go down. I paid $2.61 for a gallon of gas yesterday in Lexington, Kentucky. So I think we need these tax cuts and lower gas prices. We need that to kick in. We need the lower inflation, lower unemployment. We need that to kick in. We need housing costs to come down. The other thing is, I would love to see, as a little bit of a foreign policy geek, I would love to see the president put as much energy into Ukraine as he did into the Middle East, because what he did in the Middle East was a generational victory. But I'd love to see him put that much energy into ending Russia's terrible attacks and war on Ukraine.
You want to see both democracies win their wars pretty definitively.
I do. Absolutely.
That's a good place to be.
I think it's a great place to be. And I think it's not only the right thing for Republicans to be there, and Democrats like John Fetterman, who I have a lot of respect for, by the way, but I think it's the right way for the country. We want democracies in other places around the world. And we certainly need a counterbalance to the autocracy that exists in Russia.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the things the MAGA movement in their break from the Reagan era, they're not shy about expanding the government when it serves their interests. How do you think the new generation of Republican leadership is going to strike that balance between, standing up for values, but also, remaining pretty anchored in I don't want to say cold, but an economic efficiency argument for which public policies are best? How is that new balance going to be struck?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer to it. I mean, it's going to take people running on that kind of platform and winning and then governing from that position. It's why I like Ron DeSantis, and I voted for him in the 2024 Republican primary for president. Marco Rubio, who I'm a huge fan of, probably Trump's best cabinet appointee. Mm-hmm. These are the guys I like. With them, you get most of the Trump policies without all the rhetoric. Although, DeSantis and Rubio, you have to be able to have the verbal battles back and forth with the Democrats. People expect that. It's been going on since the founding of our country and the Declaration of Independence. The founding fathers argued amongst themselves until they came to an agreement. That's what living in a republic is all about. But I could do without things like, let's make Canada the 51st state. I mean, it's superfluous. It's unnecessary.
And bad for the Senate.
What's that?
And very bad for you in the Senate if it ever happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd never control the U.S. Senate again if that happened. So, I'm in the bourbon business. I've been to Toronto to watch my horses run at Woodbine twice this year, and I went up for the Breeders' Crown harness racing event at Woodbine Mohawk. Not an ounce of Kentucky bourbon or American whiskey in the Toronto duty-free airport. That was just completely unnecessary and avoidable by us. Mm-hmm. And I go back and I'm a 3-time Trump voter. Mm-hmm. And I agree with about 80% of his policies. And he's controlled my party now for 10 years. And, I'm glad he's president, and I'm glad that Harris isn't. But that doesn't mean I can't, I'm not going to speak up from time to time and encourage my party to move a certain direction so we can continue to win elections and remain relevant.
Where do you think the Democrats will end up going for leadership? Gavin Newsom looks okay today, but he's also the only one who is all but said he's in the race.
We're a long way away from. We're 2 years away from, a little over 2 years from the first Iowa caucus and New Hampshire primary, and people who were front runners 3 years out rarely win the nomination. So many things can happen, and we've seen the Democrats be completely manipulative in 2024 and 2020. Let's go to 2020. Biden was running 4th or 5th when they decided he was the only person who could defeat Trump, and so they cut a deal to win him South Carolina and make him the nominee. He wasn't going to win unless they saw that. And then, Kamala, they forced Biden out of the race and got Kamala the nomination without a single vote. So the Democrats there's precedent now for them doing whatever they can. They'll throw anybody under the bus, including an incumbent president, in order to win. So, I don't know if Newsom's got the staying power. I'd like to see him be the Democrat nominee because I think we'd win 40 states if Vance or Rubio or DeSantis is the nominee. But who knows? AOC and her clique in the squad, the far left, they may feel energized now with Mamdani, and who knows? Maybe she makes a run at it, and both parties are kind of retreating into their corners of extremism, and that's not a good thing for either party or our country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's going to be a lot to watch, but Damon, thanks so much for stopping by and helping us look ahead after these couple races and really putting them into perspective for us.
Always a pleasure. My closing thought is, don't read too much into what happened on Tuesday. Blue states voted blue, and New York decided to elect a completely different stripe of Democrat and avowed socialist, and it's going to be interesting to watch. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Where can people follow you if they want to keep up with what you're thinking?
Best place is on Twitter, Damon_Thayer. And, I post on there about politics, horse racing, bourbon, concerts, movies, and what's happening at Prediction News.
Well, I'm all in on the Prediction News and bourbon content, that's for sure. Well, if you're here with us, give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Prediction News, and follow us on X at Prediction News. Damon, thanks again.
All right. Always good to be on with you, Chris.